Welcome to the Mind of Business Success podcast. I'm your host, Alicia Kramer. Our guest today is Dallas Travers. We are going to get into business and mindset and clients and all of that good stuff. Welcome to the show, Dallas.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to be here.
So I know we threw you off a little bit because you're like, oh, we're recording today. So we're literally extracting the essence of who you really are on a whim during this episode. Let's start by talking about your business. Let's give our listeners a frame of reference for who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I have a year-long mentorship program for values-driven coaches. It's called The Hive, and the mission of The Hive is to really give coaches a foundation to build a business that they're really proud of. So a lot of Hive members, they've been I call it the hodgepodge, right? They've been patchworking a business plan together with a $9.97 course they got over here and a 30-day challenge they did over there. And they just really, nothing that they've tried has a through line. So the Hive gives them that through line and really helps them use their coaching skills in how they attract clients and how they develop their brand and how they talk about their business and even in how they launch their course.
I love it. A lot of people are bootstrapping in the beginning, which is natural and it's normal. And it works for a lot of people in the beginning, but it's not really a sustainable business model. You have to start to make it a coherent business in order for there to be growth and scale and longevity. Now, you specialize in the coaching industry, which is really a robust, growing industry. There's no shortage of coaches, training programs to become a certified coach. There is everything from those who purport to be the creme de la creme of coaching, like don't go with anybody else because we are so, polished and perfect and pristine, to people who are sort of just throwing together their own coach certification trainings. What are you seeing in the industry? What are you seeing in terms of norm these days?
Yeah, so I would say that my corner of the world is really about helping coaches bring their business online. So when it comes to the online marketing space, I am finally starting to see more and more people call out business practices that aren't client centered. That's the language that I use, right? So I believe in centering the client in all that you do, which is so helpful for coaches because they're coaching because they want to help people. So all of these sales and marketing strategies that they learn often create friction for them because they're the opposite of why they're in business. So there are a lot of online practices that are designed to help folks overcome their objections to investing in whatever program you're selling. And there isn't a lot of emphasis put on how do we overcome objections to implementing once someone is actually inside of your program. So the thing I'm seeing in the online space is almost like an amplification of outdated, even harmful marketing practices. And those are getting louder, but also dissenting voices are starting to rise up and call out or almost create this permission structure to allow folks to think through why they're taking on the strategies they're taking on instead of just following what they see everyone else doing online. So I think it's a really exciting and confusing time to have an online business because these conflicting messages are so loud and clear.
A lot of our listeners are in different types of businesses, meaning we do have probably quite a few coaches, consultants, but we also have your conventional brick and mortar businesses. We have not only different types of service provider businesses, but product-based business models. The one thing that everyone has in common is they're all pretty much heart-centered, good, ethical people that are wanting to improve the quality of their own lives, but they're wanting to do it from the right place. And a lot of these business models that you're talking about do feel somewhat inauthentic, a little bit sleazy, very self-centered. And like you said, they're not client or customer centric. They're me centric. They're how much money can I make? How many people can I sell into this program? And there's nothing wrong with wanting to create a really nice income for yourself. There's nothing wrong with wanting a great quality of life for yourself. But where I think people get tripped up is feeling there's an incongruency in their marketing and who they are as a person, their own values, their own ethics, and just wanting to find a way to do business that feels clean energetically, that feels clean mentally and emotionally, that feels like it really represents who they are.
Yeah.
How do we break down the old paradigms that are tripping us up and really start to get clear on what type of marketing works, but also feels right to us?
Yeah, such a good question. So I have a couple of thoughts on this. The first one is it's your values that allow you to have a sustainable business. We could have a whole conversation about how to whip up some sort of offer and have a 5, even a 6-figure month. But then what are you left with next month? So it's your values that allow for sustainability. So the first thing that I recommend for every listener is to get crystal clear on what your values are. And it's not the values of your business. I'm not talking about a business mission statement. I'm talking about the things that matter to you in your life, because your business doesn't live in some sort of bubble. It's not different. So when we know our values, we can run any marketing opportunity through like a values-driven litmus test. And often what can happen for folks who are so values-driven is they are looking at marketing through a binary lens. So I'm either going to follow this thing that you've taught me to the T, or I'm not going to do it at all, because it has to align with my values. Well, if that's true, none of us would be marketing anything, because marketing is uncomfortable, right? Especially if you're values driven. So this is about A, understanding your values, B, looking at different marketing strategies, running them through your values to identify what are the ways in which you're going to define whether or not this strategy is successful for you. And number 2, what tweaks do you need to make so that the actions you're taking are indeed values aligned? So it's about, Alicia, like getting comfortable living in the gray zone a little bit, because otherwise I think a lot of values driven people take things too far, and I don't want to be salesy and I don't want to take advantage of people. And then we rob people of the opportunity to buy our incredible program, or the beautiful couch that we've designed, like whatever it is we're offering to the world. And that is also not client-centered. So there's this wonderful book. It's probably, 25 years old now, by a man named Piero Ferrucci, and it's called The Power of Kindness. This book, I read it maybe a decade ago, really changed me. But he does this beautiful job of distinguishing the difference between being kind and being polite. And if we look at that through the lens of marketing, politeness is doing or saying whatever we need to do in order to avoid discomfort for ourselves or for the other person. So inherently, politeness is rarely authentic. Kindness, on the other hand, is completely authentic, and it's about being willing to do the hard things, make the risky offer, make adjustments because it serves the person that we intend to serve. So kindness, polite is easy and super convenient. Kindness can feel very inconvenient. And if you run a business, it's kind to sell. It's kind to promote, because you got to give your audience the opportunity to decide for themselves. So I think for us, we have to like stop getting it twisted, right? You're not a better person and you're not values driven because you don't sell. You're actually not helping. You're not living your mission if you're not selling.
So true. I love that distinction between politeness and kindness. That is not something most people would intuitively recognize, because as children, we're taught to be polite. And oftentimes people use the word kindness when really what they're talking about is being polite. And so as adults now, we have to have that distinction in our own mind so that we can make sure that we're doing the right thing instead of what we might sometimes confuse as the right thing, which is really just the easy thing, but not necessarily the best thing.
Yeah, I agree. I really agree. I'd love to spell out an example of this for your listeners, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
So you mentioned it. I work with coaches. A lot of coaches begin building their business by filling their private client roster. That requires sales calls. So if you're a potential client, we're going to meet one-on-one. I'm going to like take you through my sales process. And then at the end, I'm going to invite you to become a client. Often, and this is a really tangible example. So often what the mistake a coach will make is they'll have this incredible discovery session. They'll do a little coaching. There's a real connection there. They may not even present an offer, but let's assume they do. So now I've invited you to become a client. You say yes, and I say to you, great, I'm going to send you a contract and a payment link, and off you go. You might sign the contract and click on the payment link and actually sign up, but you might not. So that's polite because I don't want to sit there and make you pay on the call. That is manipulative and all of the terrible things we've learned. But when we think about it through the lens of kindness, why not stand right beside you as you take the brave step of reading and signing the contract and filling out the payment information right then and there? Think of how differently you would feel leaving that call, like, oh, okay, it's official, I did it. Instead of, oh, do I really want to do this? Maybe I'm not ready. Let me think on it. So polite is getting the yes and then getting the money later. Kind is actually getting the yes and holding the space for the client to follow through on the thing that they want. So that's for me, a very clear illustration of being brave enough to be kind instead of afraid and therefore simply polite.
Right. Now, in a conventional model, it would be through the lens of you do that to make sure that you close the client.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas what you're sharing here is if it's an aligned yes for the client, if they feel intuitively that this is the right next step for them, there is that terror barrier that a lot of people bump up against when they are reaching for something that is new, unknown, and outside of their comfort zone. And it's sort of like my daughter's learning how to swim. She's 4. And if I just had her take a couple of lessons and then threw her in the pool by herself to let her fend for herself, that's probably not going to go so well because her own fears and self-doubt is going to kick in, and it's going to rob her of the opportunity to be held in a safe space where she can trust herself and hone her skills and actually embrace what all of that can be for her. talking about manipulating somebody into doing something that you as the coach or the service provider intuitively knows is wrong for the client. We're talking about holding the space for someone who needs to know that they're being held in that safe environment, and they can get there. They can get from where they are to where they want to be.
Yes. And just to be really clear, I'm not suggesting that we force the person to fill in their credit card information now. They can decide that they need to think about it for a day. Great. This is client centered, right? But to not make that option available is also client centered. To just assume that everyone is willing and able to follow through on their own, that's not actually helping people.
Let's talk a little bit about some of those mindset challenges.
Sure.
So we have it on both sides. We have it on the side of the coach or the business owner, their own fears, insecurities, limiting beliefs that interfere with their ability to be more proactive in their business. And then of course we have it on the other side, which is the client or customer and their own challenges, their own mindset stuff that is interfering with their ability to say yes to themselves and yes to opportunities for growth and expansion in their own life. I'm sure you're helping your clients both with their own mindset challenges and how to help their clients with their mindset challenges. And so I know that you focus on this from a coaching model perspective, but I know this is going to be a valuable conversation for everybody because we're all human and it doesn't matter what business you're in. It's probably relatable to a lot of people. So I'd love to go there just a little bit. And obviously, we won't cover every mindset obstacle that everyone has, but what are some of the more common ones that you see?
A mindset obstacle that stops a business owner from moving forward. Is that what you're asking me?
How they're getting in their own way.
Oh, gosh. I think a big one, somewhere along the way, okay, you mentioned it. This is a great place to start. You mentioned it at the beginning of our conversation. In the beginning, the thing that helps us get past the first couple years in business is brute force, right? It's our scrappiness. It's our willingness to work as much as we have to. It's also kind of, at least this was the case for me. My first business, I started it when I was 24 and I had zero idea of what it actually takes to run a business. And I think back then, if I had known what it takes to run a business, I probably wouldn't have gotten started. So our naivete serves us really well in the beginning as well. And then there comes a point where the things that got us even to six figures, right, are the same patterns, thoughts, and actions that we have to shed in order to bring the business up to $250,000, $500,000. So a mindset shift that was so important for me to drop was this idea that the harder I work, the more success I'll have, because that it's just not a clean equation in that way. So hard work sometimes is the answer in the beginning, but at some point we have to shift away from hard work being the answer and toward bigger thinking being the answer. So inside the Hive, I talk about what I call the hiring triangle. So as we're growing, this was a big one for me. Sometimes I would just forget that I could hire someone to help me because I only looked at hiring as an expense and just didn't feel ready to take on that expense instead of looking at hiring as bringing an asset into the company. So when I think about the lessons, I've been in business 21 years, right? The first lesson I learned was like hard work will only get me so far. The second lesson I learned was the importance of relating to whether it's a contractor, whether you're bringing on an employee, everything you're spending money on in your business is an asset. And when you believe that, you're more able to invest in those assets, but also you're more able to connect the dots between the work that team member is doing and the revenue that is able to be generated, even if it's a customer service person and they're not selling at all, but now you don't have to do the customer service, so you can sell more. I think the third thing that I learned was to eat the fish and spit out the bones. I kind of alluded to this earlier, but there is no one model that is going to work from A to Z for every business. So really embracing our own agency, our awareness of choice, to understand that there's so much to be learned. Number one, through the mistakes that we make. Number two, through the practices we learned that are not values aligned. And then number three, through taking a formula and owning the formula, taking the strategy and owning the strategy. Because I think what I see with my Hive members, folks who come into the Hive and they're like 5 or 6 years in business, the thing they need to work on the most is reestablishing a connection to their own self-trust. They've relied on teachers or experts or AI tools, you name it, right? To make decisions for them, that they no longer can identify their own wisdom, their own intuition, or even their own values. So those are a few mindset lessons that I've learned or observed over the years. And I think that, I don't know, it just all comes down for me to two things. Number one, reminding myself that I always have a choice. And number two, to bring it back to where we began, reconnecting with my values, because values make decisions really clear, not always easy, right? But really crystal clear.
I love that. So many nuggets there. So good. So then I want to just take a moment and I want to dig into maybe on a practical level. We have a lot of individuals who are trying to get to their next level, whatever that is. And there is a lot of bad information in the online space about online business. People are confused and they're sometimes discouraged and they're sometimes frustrated. And I know that there are a lot of really well-intentioned individuals in the coaching space who are questioning, is this the right path for me? Because they can't figure it out. They're trying really hard. Their intentions are good. They don't have the right models. They don't have the right strategy for them. Now you've created this container with the Hive and the work that you do to help people with the sort of outer game of business, but also touching on that inner game, the mindset side of things, getting their head right. For those individuals who are questioning, right, is this the right path? Am I fooling myself, right? Is this just a pipe dream? There's how many, tens of thousands of coaches. Is this even a viable business? What advice do you have? How does someone really know? Do they have the chops to be a business owner? Can this be a viable business model?
Yeah. So, and I mean this with complete sincerity, but I believe without question that if you have a purposeful connection to why it is you want to have a coaching business or an earring making business, it kind of doesn't matter. But if there's a purposeful connection behind that, other than, ooh, this is a great way to make money, because there are tons of ways you can make money, right? But building a business is hard. So anyone telling you otherwise, they're just not giving you the full picture. So if you have a purposeful intention behind why you're doing what you're doing, you can learn how to build a sustainable business. So through that lens, everybody has what it takes. And I believe that with sincerity. Now, here's the problem. I'm thinking about a coach I met a year ago. I'm going to call her Wilma, okay? When I met Wilma, the story that she shared, and I'm not saying she's making up a story, that actually her experience had been, I've been in business for 6 years. I'm about $35,000 in debt, investing in different coaches and different things and learning whatever. And I don't have any clients. This is my last hurrah, right? It's like I'm giving myself a year and that's it. So the tape that kept playing in her mind was this race against the clock, right? I've been trying to build my business for 6 years. But what I was able to see so clearly was, hold on a second, that's not fair. Yes, you've been trying to work for yourself for 6 years, but it's been 6 different niches, right? You've attempted countless dozens of different strategies, but you haven't stuck with any of them long enough to get the data to understand where to course correct, right? To really understand what's working and not working. And the more that time passed, the less, I don't like the word patient, the less she trusted herself. So she'd try a niche for a week or two, and if she didn't get a client, which that just isn't real, right? But if she didn't get a client, then she'd switch her niche, or it was just chaos. She was in the stuck coach chaos cyclone. So, number one, if you have a purposeful connection, you can have a business. In order to get the answer to, am I cut out for this? You have to follow through on a plan long enough to actually get data. And you have to relate to your business realistically for being in the stage that it's in. So she'd been starting a business for 6 years. She hadn't been running a business for 6 years. Because when we're starting, we give ourselves like some slack, right? We're allowed to learn and to test and experiment. But if you don't see your business at an accurate phase, you're going to try to skip some steps and then it's not sustainable, or you're not going to follow through. So I say, with your business, with any marketing or sales strategy, you've got to give it 90 days of consistent practice in order to even begin to tell whether it's working and what parts of it are working and where it needs improvement. And most business owners don't understand that enough to give it things enough time. So they're just starting over and over again, often for years, like our friend Wilma.
That is great advice. And that's the perfect segue for you to share with our listeners how they can connect with you, how they can learn more about the program that you offer, and reach out if it seems like it might be the right fit for them.
Sure. Thank you for letting me share. So, we're on a podcast. The best place to learn more from me and connect with me is to check out my podcast. It's called Coaches on a Mission. And every week, I actually coach a business owner through an obstacle that they face in their own business. So, it's really actionable. And if you're a coach, you're going to love it because it's just coaching all over the place. I also love answering any business questions through Instagram. So you can DM me. My Instagram handle is Dallas Travers Biz Mentor, B-I-Z Mentor. And those are 2 great places to learn a lot and to begin to build a connection with me.
Wonderful. I want to thank you so much, Dallas, for being with us today. You really did deliver some nuggets and some actionable things that people can implement no matter what business they're in, which is always awesome. I love when someone comes on and they're a wealth of information that people can actually, like grab a hold of and do something with.
Well, thank you for having me. It was a really fun conversation.
And of course, we've got to thank all of our listeners. We're doing this for you. If you haven't already subscribed, make sure you do so. And until next time, we will see you in the next episode.